Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros.
It's fun. We've been talking about it for a while and we're finally doing it. So I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, yeah. Just to let you folks know, we've been friends for over a decade now, and we talk all the time.
All the time.
We talk all the time. We talk about our personal lives, obviously, but a bulk of our conversations are about entertainment, the entertainment industry, movies in particular. And we always joke that well, that was a good episode of the panel.
Yeah, yeah. We would talk for hours on end and say, man, if we just collectively put all these audios together, we would
Yeah,
have a very long discussion online.
right, right. And obviously podcasting's been around for a while, but video casting didn't really start getting big until more recently.
Yes.
And obviously I've had a little practice doing this now. You've had practice through other mediums, but we'll get to that in
Yeah.
a second. And I said, you know what, I think it's time to start.
I was so excited. I was so excited when you said, "Hey man, I'm ready to go. Are you ready to go?" And I was like, "I'm ready to go." I said, "Hey, we can do this. This is easy."
Yeah, yeah, it is. Well, I appreciate it. I know that you've been asked to do this, and
Yeah.
yeah, and I feel very honored. I feel very honored, and I think a couple people here and there have asked me for things, and I've turned them down because I knew in the back of my mind, I said, you know what, I'm gonna end up being on camera with Ricardo one day, and I want to
Yeah.
save that energy for
Yeah,
when,
I've been asked by a few friends, and it's one of those
yeah,
things where it just never came to fruition. The people would
sure,
say, "Hey, we should get together and collectively talk about movies," and I'm like, "Absolutely, whenever you're ready, you let
right,
me know." And it
right.
just kind of out of sight of mind. But we've always talked about it. I was like, "Oh no, this is going to be the one. This is going to be the one that happens." As I already knew.
Yeah, well, as the viewers will see, we kind of flow, and it's very seamless.
Hmm.
I made it a point not to prepare anything for today. I just wanted to be organic,
Good,
and
good. Just let it, just let
in the
it.
future we'll have a little bit of more of a format. But I figured we'd introduce ourselves, let everybody know some
Hmm.
things. I want to about to you first as far as your credentials, because I want folks to know that while we are movie fans, and we're gonna get into why we're such big movie fans, how we got into movies. But I think the first thing we got to do is let people know our credentials as
Hmm.
far as film and acting goes. And I will bow to you first. Well, and the reason for that is I want people to know that we've actually been trained,
Okay.
and that when we watch film, it's not just as fans of film, but as trained individuals as well. So, Ricardo,
Yeah.
I will let you go first.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's great because, like you said, because of our backgrounds in film and like in other mediums, you're always a student of the game.
Right.
And because we went to training, like for myself, I went to acting school. I went to Wiesbaden and Ryan. I studied method acting. I've done commercial acting, and it was always something that I had always been gravitated towards, and it just gave me a whole new perspective because when you watch movies growing up, you kind of see it as a spectacle, right? It's larger
Right.
than life. It's a big screen, it's a popcorn, it's a blockbuster. And then I started to study the craft a little bit and I started to realize just how much goes into this from a performer perspective and watching everyone just come together and make this thing happen. So for me, it's always been a learning experience to this day, where I might have watched movies growing up from a fantasy point, and then later watching it as almost like studying in school. Like every film that I watch, I'm looking for performances, I'm looking for
Yeah.
writing. It encouraged me. Watching movies and studying acting encouraged me to start writing. It was never something that I saw myself doing growing up,
Right.
but I started writing and I started writing and I started writing stories and I started writing short films and I started writing projects that I wanted to be a part of. Because as a fellow actor, sometimes you don't necessarily get the things that you want. You want to portray different aspects of yourself,
Sure.
and I just started writing and doing that, and I'm always learning because of
Mm.
movies. So that's always been one of my favorite things about movies is enjoying them, but also learning from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was just a video store kid basically, and couldn't really afford to go to the movie theater too much growing up, so we would have to wait till it came out. And wasn't until I was about a teenager I started making it a point to go to the movie theater a little bit more, and I wanted to act. So as far as that goes, you don't really know too many people with video cameras. So the
Yeah.
next best the next best
Yeah.
case is local or community theater. And that's how I got my start as far as, being trained to act. And I eventually ended up pursuing that in college. I got my undergraduate in theater performance.
Mhm.
And that's as far as that goes. And I pursued it here and there. I did a lot of amateur theater, a little bit of film, a little bit of television, but just very minor things, and more so online stuff as far as that goes. So, but that's just to say that once I got the training as far as acting goes, and even while I was doing local theater, it just allows you to look through the lens of a
Mhm.
performer when you're watching
Yeah.
stuff now. And I had a directing class in college. I had a writing class in college. It's a lot different when we watch film, and it's so fun that I still have the ability to shut my brain off when I'm watching
Mhm.
a movie and say, okay, this is a movie, and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, this is off, that's off, this could have been better,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that's cool. Like a critique, don't get me wrong, a critique is great, and I love chatting movies. But I can just watch a movie and be like, you know what, I'm watching a movie right now, and that's good
And
as
it's
far as
great
that
because
goes.
there are a lot of people, and I believe we both know people that will do that. Even on a first watch of a movie, they'll start to point things out,
Right.
maybe that they would have done differently, or maybe something that stands out. It usually doesn't hit me until maybe a third watch or so. Because like you, it's great to just be lost in it, and I think
Yeah.
that's something I've always loved about movies, to be lost in it. I wanted to say something because you brought up, wanting to film, and there wasn't really people that you could do that with, so you went on stage. I remember being a
Right.
kid in high school, and I was fortunate enough that my parents had one of those VHS cameras. And
Right.
anytime uh, I had to do a report for school, I was always that guy that went to a teacher and said, "Hey, can I make a movie? Would that be appropriate? Could I make a
Right.
film instead of a report?" And some of my teachers were like, "No way," but some of them were very, very, very cool about it. So me and my friends would go out there with this VHS and make movies at such a young age, and that was so much fun. But
Right.
it's just one of those things that's like I've always loved to create. I just didn't realize how much I loved it until, I started seeing more and more and more movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had to look something up. So that's I of course when the camera's rolling I can't think of it, but it's we have that ability, the suspension of disbelief, when you're
Yes.
watching a film. It's okay. We're watching a movie and we're gonna enjoy
Mhm.
this movie, so that's good stuff. When did you fall in love with movies, Rick? Like, when was that? Did you have like a moment when you fell in love with movies, or was it just movies have always been around and it just became a thing for you?
It's so funny because I remember watching movies as far back as I can remember. I remember watching Superman the movie. I remember watching Batman the movie. I remember watching these films. For whatever reason, and as silly as it may be to people, it's my favorite movie. When
Right.
I saw Ghostbusters in the early '90s, and I don't know why I was drawn so much to it. But it did something for me that I fell in love with movies at that point. And I don't know if it was the cast, the characters. I don't know if it was the special effects as a kid just being blown away. I'm
Hmm.
not exactly sure what it was, but for whatever reason, that movie always stuck to me. And it was from that moment on that I had this infatuation with movies. Now, I didn't really get to go to the movies that much as a kid. It just wasn't something that was something that we could do.
Right.
So I remember, watching movies just on television, you know what I mean? But I was always drawn to it. More so than anything else. Growing up, it's a lot of sports and things of that nature, but I was always drawn to movies. I always it played into a lot of my imagination. But as far as I can remember, man, there's always been a love for it. I can't remember a time where I didn't love it. When I got into high school is when I really started to go to the movies a lot more. To the point where there'd be times I would go alone and sometimes feel some sort of way about that. I was like, oh, I wish I had people to come with me to the
Right.
theaters, but I didn't really know that many people around me that were into movies as much as I was, especially at that age. So I would have my mom or dad be like, "Hey, if you guys are going up into the city there, you might drop me off at a movie so I can catch something." And they were very nice about it. So they'd go shopping, I'd go watch a movie. Sometimes my aunt would do it. God bless her. She would say, "Oh yeah, you want to go to a
It's
movie? I'll drop you
nice.
off. I'll go
Yeah.
run some errands." So I've always had a really
Sure.
good base. And but as far as I can remember, I was always attracted to it. And any way I could go, I would find a way to go.
That's good stuff. I remember seeing uh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the movie theater. I remember seeing that, for the first time when that
Hmm.
came out. But it was always just blockbusters, usually. So most of the time, just waiting for things to come out on home video. And I liked superhero movies like Christopher Reeve, Superman. He was a big thing for me growing up. I enjoyed, watching his movies, the Richard Donner movies as
Hmm.
Superman, and even the ones that Richard Donner weren't involved with, I still watch it because
Yeah.
Christopher
Yeah.
Reeve,
Yeah.
and that was big for me. I watched the Tim Burton Batman movies and the Schumacher Batman movies. I remember that being a thing for me too. But I think the thing that changed for me was the first time I saw The Matrix in the movie theater.
Okay.
And I had seen tons of blockbusters, tons of classics, tons of movies up until then. But that let me know what, I guess this word gets thrown around a lot, what cinema can be.
Yes, it's cinema,
It's cinema, and what the Wachowskis did with that movie was just remarkable. And to see it on the big screen and just the concepts and ideas that they just threw at you. And visually at the time, we had not seen anything like that in film ever.
No, no. I've heard people say, and I agree. There were movies before The Matrix, and there were
Yeah.
movies after The
Oh,
Matrix.
great
Now,
statement.
I will be completely and brutally honest with you. I saw that at the theaters when I was a kid, completely over my
Hmm.
head. I
Hmm.
was not mentally prepared for what that movie was. It
Right.
was way more advanced than I expected it to be. I remember seeing a commercial for it, and I said, "Hey, Dad, can we go see The Matrix? It looks like a fun action movie, and it's a phenomenal action movie. But that movie is very intelligent, and I wasn't there
Yeah.
yet. And it took me a few times when I got older, a few years later, to go back and rewatch it and just see how magnificent it was. And it was another aspect of what I loved about movies. So I started going back and watching older movies that I may not have appreciated because I just wasn't there yet. And it showed me that like movies can almost be timeless in a way.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can watch a movie now and feel a certain way and then watch it later and feel completely different. And The Matrix was one of those movies that did that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so since then, it just started, we've all been through, we started our VHS collection, our DVD
Yep.
collection, our Blu-ray
Yep.
collections. If we enjoyed it that much, I want to own that at the house, and I'm going to
Hmm.
watch that. So obviously, things are great now. Like we have movie theater memberships now. I mean,
Yeah. It's good. It's
it's
good.
mine, but it's great though because I do that. I have the time to do that,
Hmm.
and obviously your situation is a little bit different, and we're gonna
It's a little bit. Yeah.
people will hear about that often, while we're talking. But I enjoy that now because movie theater tickets aren't cheap, but
Mm-mm.
with this unlimited situation, someone can go as often as they'd like to see something, and if not, you could stream something at the house, you could rent it,
Hmm.
and if that's not your way, then you'll just wait until it hits one of the streaming services that you're already paying for. So, one way or another, if you wait long enough, you'll be able to see a movie.
Yeah, and I've been very lucky because when years ago I would go to the movies at least twice a week. There'd be
Whew,
even days where I would go two times in one day. I
it's
remember there were
awesome.
times I'd hit an early matinee and it'd come back for the later showing. I remember seeing the same movie twice in one day. I recall doing that. I walked
Hmm.
out of the movie and go, "Wow!" I said, "Ah!" And as I was leaving, the guy who worked there goes, "You want to come back later?" And I was like, "I should come back later. That movie was great." And I remember watching it twice in one night. And the streaming is great too because obviously for someone like me, I was always a person that would always choose the theatrical experience, always
Right.
110% of the time. It didn't matter if it was a larger than life blockbuster or if it was a romantic comedy. I love the aspect and the escape of the movie theater. But for someone like me right now, that's not something I have access to as much as I did in the past. So I do appreciate when, we have straight video on demand. A movie will come out and maybe 2 weeks later it's on demand and I watch it immediately. I
Yeah.
don't mind spending $20 if I'm really looking forward to it. It's like, no, I just want to see it as soon as possible. I want to be able to communicate with people about it. I want to talk about it, especially if there's a lot of positive buzz, even a lot of negative buzz. Stuff like that intrigues me one way or another. When I
Sure.
see polar opposites for one movie, I'm like, oh, I kind of really want to see it. So
Yeah.
it's just I'm very very fortunate that they have that now because back in the
Yeah.
day when we were growing up
Nope.
that wasn't a thing. You waited months at times for it to come out on VHS or to be available on television.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Well, let's get into we'll give people a little bit of a taste. We don't want to go too long on this first one here.
Mhm.
You already touched on it. So, what about Ghostbusters? That to this day it's still your favorite movie, and I know you've seen tons of films since then.
Mhm.
What about Ghostbusters is that it's still your favorite, and you don't see anything else dethroning that movie as your favorite?
Yeah, it's unbelievable too, because people sometimes get it misconstrued when I say it's my favorite movie. They think I'm implying that it's the best movie I've ever
Right,
seen,
right.
which is a completely different conversation.
Uh-huh.
I do not think it's the technically best film I've ever seen. We've got terrific movies over the years. It's kind of even hard to argue that sentiment, but it's my favorite movie. And
Yeah.
I don't know, there's a bunch of things tied into it. There's nostalgia as well. I remember I had a cousin and he would come over very often and we always watched it together. I remember that my dad would surprise me from time to time. He would go to the video rental store and not tell me, and he would come back and he would bring a Ghostbusters VHS. And he'd be like, "Oh, hey," and I'd be so excited to watch it. And I think it was just one of those experiences that I just think everything tied together. It was the first time I think as a kid I was able to see a movie that had multiple genres and multiple tones. I remember growing up, watching straight comedy, straight action movies, straight sci-fi movies, but this had kind of like a blend of all of that. It had sci-fi, it had horror elements, it had comical elements. The effects were fantastic, and I was just like, wow, like I was blown away by it all. And then not too long after, I started watching the cartoon. So as a child, I'm combining all this experience, and I'm just like, man, there's just something about it. It's crazy that we're now in 2022, and I have yet to watch another film that's like, no, no, no. I find I think that's my new favorite. It's like, no, Ghostbusters has always been that, and it probably always will be. And again, there's
Yeah.
probably some nostalgia to that, but I love the cast. I love the actors. It's another one of those films that when I was growing up, I watched and I was like, "Oh, Peter's my favorite character. Peter's my favorite character." He was the smart aleck. He was the very dry humor guy. And as I got older, I started to gravitate more towards Winston because Winston represented
Mm,
us, the audience. He
sure.
represented the everyday man. And again, it's one of those aspects of film where like you can watch something numerous times and get something different later on. And for me, Ghostbusters has just never fallen flat. It hasn't aged for me in any sense. Terrific cast, great direction. I love the blend of horror, sci-fi, and comedy.
Mm,
I like that type of comedy as well. So for whatever reason, it is the champion, and I don't see it being dethroned anytime soon.
okay. All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, mine is The Dark Knight.
Ooh, see, ooh, you went big really
we
fast.
we
With
we
all
could
we went,
we could do an entire show about this movie.
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
we're
yeah.
not going. We're going to save that for another day because I know you love that movie too.
I
You
love The
know,
Dark Knight,
you love that.
absolutely.
But I mean, and before we get into that, and I promise I'm only going to be a few minutes on it, but I thought it was ironic that Ghostbusters is your favorite movie because growing up, the real Ghostbusters was my favorite animated show as a
Mhm.
kid, and at the time it was just so confusing because they weren't the same actors, they didn't look like the movie actors, but it didn't matter to me because I was a kid and I was just watching Ghostbusters on Saturday morning, you
Yeah.
know. So it's still fun. I remember going to see Ghostbusters 2 in the movie theater when it came
Mhm.
out because I love the cartoon so much. But then I went right back home, back to the cartoon that had nothing to do with the
Cartoon, yeah.
movies. Just such great writing. So I find that funny. As far as the Dark Knight goes, well, I've been reading comics since I was a kid, and you know we'll transition into brands and
Yeah,
universes
yeah, yeah,
later
yeah.
on. And I read a lot of Superman growing up, actually, and I was bleed over from being a fan of Christopher Reeve and Richard
Mhm.
Donner. And sometime in the 2000s, I transitioned again after a brief break from reading comics. I discovered a lot of Batman stories,
Mhm.
and I just found the writing to be incredible, the artwork to be incredible. And I don't want to get into artists and writers right now because I'll trail off
Yeah.
forever. But eventually, Batman Begins comes along, And there's another person, Christopher Nolan, that we could talk about for a while, but
Yup. Yup.
Nolan comes along, he does Batman Begins. I'm like, oh wow, that was really cool. That was awesome. They rebooted Batman, and it was really good. And then he followed up with The Dark Knight. And I remember going to see it at a midnight showing, and it was the Matrix came out in 99, The Dark Knight came out in '08. And I remember feeling the same exact way after I saw The Matrix, not as far as film goes, but just, wow, I saw something really special. You
Okay.
know, I didn't feel like it changed film forever. Well, little did we know,
Yeah, yeah.
it may or may not have changed film,
Yeah.
superhero film anyway.
Hmm.
And it was just wonderful. I saw it, I think I saw it 3 times the same day.
Okay.
I went back 2 more times that day, and I saw it multiple times that weekend. And I saw it a few times during, I saw it a lot during the theater
Hmm.
run. And it was just so cool, like the performances, the film in itself. And it was just a culmination of just me reading comic books and loving Batman so much that I found Christopher Nolan to just and he pulled elements of some stories, but he made it his own, and obviously we can't talk about The Dark Knight without that performance from Heath Ledger, one of the greatest performances of all time. Some say the greatest, possibly the greatest film performance of the
Hmm.
21st century. So
It's kind
yeah,
of it's kind of hard. Anytime someone does something really brilliant on screen or a comic book film,
right,
it's always brought back to The Dark Knight every single time.
yeah,
The Dark Knight has become the bar for what
yeah,
comic book films can aspire to be because it's
right,
always in the conversation.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and we'll save this for another time. I know I keep saying that, but we have so much to talk about. It wasn't my favorite movie. Obviously
Hmm.
there were tons of movies that came out before 2008, so I had a few other
Yeah, yeah.
favorite movies. But after The Dark Knight came out, it changed things for me. It was like, wow, you took my favorite superhero and you turned him into this force on screen,
Yeah.
and this crime drama, action, thriller. Keep naming the genres that it touches on.
Hmm.
So it was pretty cool. So all right, we're gonna take a small break right now.
All right.
All right, welcome back, friends. Had a little technical issue we had to attend to there. We just finished talking about our favorite movies,
Hmm.
and we didn't really have that much more to say. I wanted to let the viewers know. Well, I'll let you go first. What they can expect when
Hmm.
they watch us speak about movies here, Ricardo.
Yeah, for me personally, I think that, it's it should be pretty self-explanatory that there's a love for film, and
Right,
I want to make sure that that comes across, that there is a love for film. So we're gonna talk about that love for film, why we love films, why we're so open to discussing and dissecting these things. It's
right,
always a pleasure. Again, me and Anderson have talked films for a very long time, and it's
sure.
very easy for us to get lost in it. And now it's like, wait a minute, like, we I know you have. I've had people contact me and say, "Hey, what did you think of this movie? Is this something you'd recommend?"
Right,
This and that. And I'm always like, "Hey man, go watch everything and anything you can." So we were just like, "Hey, maybe we should, be able to talk about these movies with each other, but allow people to be a part of that conversation."
sure. Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Well, you'll definitely get a lot of that. Absolutely. I don't know how often we'll be able to talk about recent film releases, but I do see us having like top 10 lists,
Hmm.
maybe favorites of the year, maybe a personal top five, top tens. I don't want to get too personal, but maybe we can discuss our favorite actors and actresses,
Hmm.
things like that. So, and just a fair warning to folks. There is one, while we do love, but that's the cool thing though, is that we love film in general, even though
Hmm.
we love all types of film, but they will probably see us talking about DC properties more than anything.
Probably. And if unless you're living under a rock, you understand that DC is a hot talking point, and it
Correct.
has been for a while, and it continues to be so.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's no shade to Marvel Studios.
No,
You can,
no,
we don't want to add to that toxic fandom. You can like
no.
one, you could like the other, you could like both. It's
Hmm.
up to you. It's just, we grew up reading these comics, and these are the
Yes.
characters that we enjoy in all the mediums, animation, television, and film. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's been something we've enjoyed. Sometimes it's something we thought was okay, and
Yeah.
sometimes it was something we didn't enjoy.
We just didn't like. It was like, no, no, just
Exactly,
that didn't
exactly.
work.
And I want to let the viewers know it's you're not coming to something where you're going to hear the exact same opinion from both guys. That's for
No,
sure.
no, 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 not at all, not at all.
Yeah,
No.
so we do share a lot of opinions, but we have different opinions too. So, but we
Mhm.
know, but we don't fight like
No,
like,
no.
yeah, we don't fight like these other people
No,
online.
no, no. There is an understanding and appreciation for, like,
Yeah,
that's why I said earlier, I was like, I even like the idea of when there's polar opposites for a film. It's like I hate it. I love it. Now I'm
yeah,
intrigued. You know what I mean? So that's always
yeah,
fun.
exactly. And in recent years, I know there was a few times where you saw something, and I came back to you and I said, no, man, I didn't see
Yep.
what you saw. I didn't
Yeah,
see what you
yeah,
saw.
yeah. Yeah.
And then I said the same thing. I said I really enjoyed something. You were like, I didn't see it, didn't do it for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, and
So
that's the thing that we're always open to say, hey, like it's not something that worked for me personally, but it's never a slight at the other person. Like, oh, you like that? I can't
right,
believe you like that. It's like, no, no,
yeah,
no. It's like, well,
exactly.
obviously you saw something in there that I just didn't see, and
Yeah,
that's perfectly fine.
I hope we can do a little something for the fandom in the positive direction of showing that you can have a different opinion on art,
Yes,
because all art is subjective and all
absolutely.
film is subjective, and I hope we can add to that. And there might be some moments where we let something slip, like, oh no, that was awful or whatever,
Yeah.
but we know how much goes into these things and these
Mhm.
projects. There's the tech crew, there's the director, there's the production crew, there's the actors, there's extras, there's so much that goes into this,
Yeah.
and we know how much goes into it, obviously. And at the end of the day, even though all that is true, you can still enjoy something or not enjoy something. It's just we don't want to fuel that. Well, because I didn't enjoy it, you shouldn't enjoy it either. you know
Absolutely. I always try to keep in mind no one sets out to make a quote unquote bad movie.
Right.
It's not the intention. So whoever is making movie is putting everything they have into it. And I want to be
Sure.
respectful of those people. And I think we both do that very well. Where it's like, hey, we're not going to be here and just rant and say, this
Right.
is terrible for the sake of being terrible.
Right.
We'll explain why it didn't work for us, and that'll be it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I appreciate that. So oh man, some news dropped today. The news is dropping like every day now.
Yeah,
About the DCU, formerly the DC,
absolutely.
formerly the DCE, or DC Extended Universe. So
Yeah. Yep.
um, we're definitely gonna be talking about stuff. But uh, I wanted to thank you for coming on here, brother.
I'm so grateful that you said it forward and you're like, we're gonna do it. And I was like, all right, I'm ready. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna do it. We are here and we're ready to talk on movies and talk about movies rather. And
Hmm.
thank you, folks, for coming to the panel. We are the Panel Bros, and we
Yep.
will see you soon.
All right.